Ladies and gentlemen, Tuesday, March 17th, we're coming up at 7 o'clock on the East Coast. I am back from Montana. Sam is back from the Bahamas. Sam, did you have a good time?
Dude, I swam with sharks, and I drank on a boat with my best friends for 3 straight days.
That's
so I
about
had a
as
pretty
good as it
awesome
gets.
time.
That's
Yeah.
about as good as it gets. I'm glad you're able to get back in the country with the DHS shutdowns and everything. I had my problems with American Airlines, and I got to say, American, Delta, it doesn't matter. United, everybody, air travel in 2000 and what year is it? 2026 is just awful. But we are in peak off season. We just had, I believe, the last press conference before we get into spring ball, which is super exciting. But I don't know if y'all saw it. We saw this article that came across the Twitter sphere. We put it on our Instagram, we put it on our Twitter, and it was basically about how much money was spent on fireworks for Virginia Tech in the 2025 and different schools season. And David Covucci, who joins us today, he works for FOIAball, and he happens to be a 2007 graduate of Virginia Tech. He's the editor-in-chief of FOIAball. We don't have much of an agenda other than I am fascinated by the content that is on this website. David, I'm so glad that you reached out. How are you doing? Welcome to the show.
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me. Yeah, I started FOIAball about 6 months ago. It's just me having a blast at all the absurd and stupid things college football programs do, which you'd be shocked at how much there is. It's a never-ending cascade of idiocy, and I love every second of it.
So before we get into what FOIA is and kind of what the mission statement is, tell me just a little bit about your career path. At first, I looked at your LinkedIn and I was like, I'm not just going to read your LinkedIn. Tell me a little bit about graduating from tech and getting into what you're doing now.
Good, because I had a guy do that on a podcast. And I was like, I made up all that. Like, none of that is accurate. He was like, you worked for Uproxx. I was like, no, that was just a different website I put on there because the site I was working at was Bro Bible, and I didn't want to put that on my resume. But I was always been a journalist, high school journalist. I went to Virginia Tech. I was on the Collegiate Times there. Sort of maybe kind of got kicked off the Collegiate Times to write an article about bar golf and getting drunk at like 18 bars.
Who hasn't done that? Who hasn't done that?
Whomst among us?
I'm wondering if that's still a thing. Like, I think I invented it, but I don't know if people are still doing it. Like, I hope we started a tradition.
On my 21st birthday, I certainly did it. I couldn't tell you what happened on the back nine.
I'm so glad that still happened. Yeah, I guess. So I wrote an article sort of detailing the drunken escapades that night, and I did not know that like the next day was like high school tours, and a bunch of parents like grabbed the Collegiate Times, and that was one of the top stories, and they were apparently very pissed. And like, I think the president at the time called the CT, and I was about to graduate, so they're kind of like, maybe you just don't write a column your last couple of weeks. I was like, you know what? Oh well, I'll take it. It's a badge of honor. I was banned. They put my picture up in the River Mill. I was banned from there. This is not even talking about my website. This is just my lowlights at Virginia Tech. Yeah, I went back like 3 years ago. I was like, I'm banned from here, and the guy was like, I don't know who you are. I was like, oh man.
Did that make you feel better or worse? Were you kind of hoping that they'd remember you?
Absolutely. 100% both. I was like very happy because I was like, good, I love this bar. I'm glad I can go to it. And two, I was like, I thought I mattered. I thought like my photo would be up there forever.
So we'll start with this firework article. This is shocking. So I won't spoil the whole article, but I'll share this one sentiment. So the game against Old Dominion, yes, the game where we lost, I believe, 45-23. You were able to FOIA. Well, first of all, what is FOIA? What is that, and who falls under the jurisdiction of FOIA for our listeners?
Oh, so FOIA is my favorite thing in the world. It is the Freedom of Information Act, which basically states that every government document that any agency or department produces is technically the records of the people. As a democracy, we grant the power of the government, to them. So everything they do is our right to have. So you can FOIA the university president's like lunch menu to see what he ate at a dinner. You can FOIA a coach's spending on private jets. I have a story coming up on that soon. You can FOIA all sorts of weird things. Anytime there's a contract, anytime there's an invoice, anytime there's an email, anytime a school produces a document, and they produce documents on lots and lots and lots of things, technically it's available to get. So it's a national federal law. It trickles down to the states. So Virginia's is, VFOIA. And so all the state schools in Virginia, UVA, Virginia Tech, JMU, ODU, William and Mary, they're all subject to it. So you can find out all sorts of fun things about different schools. Like I was curious about fireworks, and I wound up getting a little more than I was bargaining for in a good way. What I found out was sort of the exact cost that the Enter Sandman entrance costs every single game, and that's $26,000, which is a lot to spend just to run on the field. Even though I like, keep in mind, I like it, but I'm just like, wow, it's a lot for each game.
It's okay. So when you decide you're going to FOIA something, walk me through very high level what the process is. Do you have to ask very specific questions? Do you have to mention what you're writing, or do you just say, I'm interested in this information, please advise, and they get right back to you?
It's actually kind of funny because, like, in a lot of standard journalism, you don't want to tell your sources what you're reporting on, because if they find out about it, they will try to obfuscate. They'll try to get people not to talk. Whereas when it comes to public records, like, they're required by the law to give it to you. So it actually is very useful to spell out what you're doing when you request it. So to this one, I said to every FOIA officers, to Virginia Techs, I want your every single invoice you have with a fireworks company. I want your full total spend for in-game stadium fireworks, stuff like that. And so that is sort of specific enough. When you're trying to get, like, what did this coach say about this assistant on email, you need to be very specific and very narrow. But a lot of times, if you just kind of tell the FOIA officer what you want, they'll give it to you, or they'll come back and say, like, you need to be more specific. So it's pretty nice. It's a pretty interactive process. You can get a lot of rejections, but you can just say, hey, why did I get rejected? I'd like that, and they'll walk you through reworking it.
I gotta imagine there are some people that are not huge David or FOIAball fans. Has it ever been combative, or has it ever been have some groups been better than other groups? What does that look like?
Kind of funny. So every state is different, and every school within every state is different. So, like, for example, Michigan State gives me everything for free right away. I'll just ask for something. They won't ask any follow-up questions. They'll just send it. Whereas the University of Michigan will not send me anything. They'll charge me for everything. They'll say, like, this is going to be so much work. And, like, I can't believe I'm in a position where I'm telling someone, I'm like, be more like Michigan State, because no one should ever sort of take that as a credo. But it just very much depends. The law is exactly the same, and states sort of apply it differently. But they can hate me all they want. Like, they're bound by the law to do this. So sometimes schools will delay. Sometimes they will. Virginia Tech has sometimes tried to charge me absurd amounts for stuff. But this fireworks one, they didn't charge a cent. I got that for free. So you never know. At some point, I don't think I'm big enough and important enough yet to, like, do FOIAs for my own name and see what people are saying about me. But down the line, I would love to do that.
So, okay, we were chatting about this before the podcast, and I thought it was super pertinent. I think it was the first press conference that Coach Franklin did where he was talking about his winter workouts. And he literally, in front of the entire media, he goes, obviously, because you guys FOIA everything. And I had assumed that he was talking about Doug Bowman, which he probably was, or Andy Bitter, which he probably was. But I didn't know David was out here sending out all these FOIA requests. But you pointed out, so correct me if I'm wrong, in Coach Franklin's tenure at Vanderbilt private school, not FOIAball, Penn State, weird FOIA laws in Pennsylvania, so difficult to FOIA, and then Virginia Tech, not as difficult to FOIA request. Is that accurate?
Yeah, so any private institution, Notre Dame, Vanderbilt,
UVA.
I was kind of blank when I'm thinking of other private schools. Syracuse, oddly, is a private school, even though you think of it as a state school. They're not subject to FOIA laws, so they're sort of allowed to do whatever they want. Pennsylvania has a weird law that exempts almost everything that their universities do from FOIA, which is kind of nuts when you think about some of the awful things that have happened at Penn State. We should be allowed to go and see everything they said and, root around ourselves. But that's a story for another time. But Virginia has pretty decent FOIA laws. It's a little more restrictive than other states, but this is the first time that James Franklin is ever going to be subjected to FOIA laws. And I'm really excited to think maybe he doesn't know how much of his stuff is public. Like, you can get his credit card statements, you can get his travel schedules, you can get all sorts of manner of things. And I'm really, it's funny because, as I said before we got started, I have my issues with James Franklin, but at the same time, I'm a dumb football fan too. And I'm like, but also, give me 10 wins and I will, I'll still report on you, but I'll be happy while I do it.
So tell me a little bit how this publication came to be back in June or July of 2025. When did you get the itch for this, and what made you take the leap?
Well, like a lot of folks in the media, I got laid off in May of 2025. But the whole time I was at this small tech and politics site where I was running a FOIA internship, teaching college students how to use public records to do reporting. I'd bring them on, walk them through the process, have them send stuff out, get stuff back, send more things out, run through records, and turn into a nice, like, big investigative piece. We'd probably do like one a semester. And, the whole time I was doing it, I was like, these college kids kind of suck at this. Like, I really wish I could just do it full time. I'm kidding, but like not. And I sort of knew that any job in media is pretty tenuous, so I was sort of kicking this idea around in my head. So it'd been going for a while, and when I got laid off, I said to my wife, I said, like, let me take a month and see if I can sketch this out and see if it'll work. And I started on it. I felt optimistic, felt good. So I said, give me 6 months. And we just hit 6 months of publishing right now. And I think it's going pretty well. It's getting a lot of good attention. We cover like really serious stuff. We've done stuff on UCLA doing tax fraud in their NIL program. And we did a story on DHS using like closed circuit cameras to surveil games at Ole Miss. And we've also done really dumb stuff like how much teams are spending on balloons in a given season, which Virginia Tech is also very high on balloon spends. They're big on fireworks, big on balloons. So they have all the basics of, top tier program. They just need the coaches and the players. They've got all the stupid pageantry around it. So it's a really fun mix of highbrow stuff and lowbrow stuff. And I just really hope people appreciate it.
Yeah, it's absolutely insane, the breadth of things that you've managed to cover in such a short time. And like you said, it can be anything from like the really big questions of like potential tax fraud to the silly things like Zinn in public urinals in the football stadium, which is hilarious, by the way. Is there an article where you've had that idea, you put in the FOIA request, and like you said, you need to be a little bit more direct with your request than a normal investigative journalist would be? Is there one where once you got the information back, the whole tone of the article changed?
All the time. Like, sometimes you have to be very narrow, sometimes you have to be sort of broad. It just sort of very much depends on, some schools will send you a lot of stuff, some schools will send you very narrow stuff. UNC is very weirdly liberal in what they send. Like, I'll ask for something and they'll just send me an extra 200 pages, and I'm like, that's great, I think that's fantastic, I would love that. So I had been requesting documents from UNC about when Mike Lombardi, he traveled to Saudi Arabia to meet with a donor to like get money for the football program, which is pretty messed up and bad. And what they sent me back was different emails from the ACC about the Holiday Bowl, like potentially moving to Saudi Arabia. Like, they'd been pitching athletic directors on that, and I was just like, holy shit. So like, I saw that. I'm like frantically Googling. I'm like, because how has no one covered this story? Like, this is a huge deal. Like, how is this not at all out there? So like, I just took that and ran with it. So yeah, you don't have to report on what you asked for. If you get something, you can spin it in any which way. When I was asking for expenses around recruiting official visits, like how they were wining and dining recruits, I kept seeing balloon budgets in it. And I was like, well, that seems like a super interesting story, because I didn't realize schools were wasting hundreds of dollars on balloons. So you kind of do sort of have to take what you get and read it very thoroughly and try to, figure out an interesting angle. But yeah, definitely can go in any which way. I can't even remember what I sent to Nebraska. I think I was asking about AI, like deepfakes on Facebook. When there's like memes where it's like Matt Rule helicoptered in aid to like hurricane victims, or like Ryan Day is, gave up his seat for a troop on a plane, like those fake memes. And they wound up sending me a different presentation that showed they were purchasing cell phone location data to track fans. And I was like, well, that's a much more interesting story. So I'm gonna do that.
I can't imagine how loose these people are with sending these documents. If you're asking a very narrow question, I got to imagine this is a very important role that I didn't even know existed.
I mean, go ahead.
No, yeah, to like the people who are sending you said information, I do wonder like how in the know, like how high up in the organization are they usually? Are these like, hourly employees that are sitting at front desks, or how high up the chain do these FOIA requests go?
So it very much depends, and I have some good stories about that, because in an ideal world, every school has a public records officer that you send. And for a lot of things like emails, they theoretically have access to the system. They can conduct the search and they can send you those things. The idea is that like an employee can't be like, I'm not going to send you that, like, please don't, and then they don't get it. So like in an ideal world, they are able to access everything. The funny thing about these laws was they were written in the 1950s before the internet existed. So the idea was you get like, 4 beers in you, you walk down to the mayor's office and you're like, I'd like to see the plans for the new city hall. And the clerk would just have to walk back there and show it to you. Like that was sort of what the obligation is. It's obviously changed. There's better ways to search now with the internet, but there's tons and tons more documents. But in certain ways it like does go up the chain. So like if you're asking for a university president's email, and Virginia has a weird quirk of the law where the university presidents are exempt, but at like Washington or Michigan or something, like they will say that the search can't be conducted by the FOIA officer. It has to be conducted by like his assistant who only has access to his email. So they'll charge you more for that. On one request to Virginia Tech, it was about private jet spending, I think. They were like, the search can only be done by James Franklin's chief of staff, and he bills out at, he makes $100,000 or $200,000, so his hourly rate is, $150.
Right.
And I was like, motherfucker, like there is no way that James Franklin is like letting his chief of staff spend 3 hours doing FOIA requests for me. Like you're definitely just looking at this yourself. This is just a way to sort of bill more than you want. But potentially some records are FOIA officers don't have access to, and they do need to go up the ladder. But all these people are bound by the law. So if you were to say like, if you were to go to a president who had to conduct a search on the honor system and say like, nope, don't have anything there. Like if I know it's there, I'm allowed to sue, and like they will sort of lose instantly. Like you can make a pretty good case that these laws are very clearly written. They're all have clauses that say they must be established in they must be interpreted liberally. The idea behind these laws is for governments to be open, so you should not restrict anything. Kentucky has a clause in its law that says even if documents are embarrassing, you still must release them. So I love that that's spelled out. So they know that like if they don't provide something and I know it exists, I can very easily like sue their ass and win damages. I haven't done that yet, but like I would very much like to get some damages from a school for
that might be a fun side quest for you.
I have some legal help yet, not enough to actually bring some suits, but I have some cases. There's a lawsuit I want to bring against UNC that's been redacting some stuff around Mike Lombardi, so that might be in the future. But yeah, there's definitely I'd be happy, if it's there and they don't give it, like it's usually relatively easy to win because the law is so clear.
So I do love Virginia Tech.
They give this stuff up
with some classic cost engineering to drive up asset valuation there by just dividing his salary by hours. It's perfect.
So tell me a little bit about so you sit down at your desk. How are you determining what you're sending out? And also, how many emails are you sending a day? Do you just like the Zen in the toilet situation? Are you just relieving yourself and you're like, you know what? I want to know what the plumbing costs on this is. Like,
I was kind of grossed out how you'd see Zen sitting in urinals in sporting events. And I was like, that's got to be a problem for schools because I bet every player is hopped up on Zen. It was nice that I taught this for a long time because as I like Papa's in myself here, like I taught this for a long time. So I had these students who didn't know anything about FOIA would come and be like, I'd like to know about this. And instead of being like, no, that's dumb, you can't FOIA that, I'd be like, okay, how can we figure that out? What sort of backdoors can we do? Like, how can we sort of work with what I know to make that happen? So I sort of learned a lot of the like intricacies of systems, but then it was just training your brain and looking at everyday life. I went to a Commanders game in December. It was like the first time I'd gone to one in like 15 years. My dad wanted to take his grandkids and my nephews, and I was happy to tag along, even though it was awful. But they rolled out a giant American flag, for the national anthem. And I said, okay, how much does that cost? And of course, schools are spending, $7-8 grand a game to roll out a American flag that travels with an entourage that gets its own hotel rooms. Like they have to pay for 3 hotel rooms a night for these people. So just sort of what you see going in the world and thinking about it. It depends how many. If it's sort of, I think the Zen one I just started out, so maybe only sent that to like 7 or 8 schools, and I lucked out with a couple hits. I was like, oh, that was one of the first ones I got back, and I was like, okay, I can make this whole thing work if I've got this dumb luck off this dumb idea. But for the fireworks one, I probably sent out about 120. I've heard back from like 50. Some schools are just going to take forever. Some will never do it. So you do kind of have to paint with a broad brush when you want to do these broad topics about a lot of things, but I'll send out, very narrow ones just specifically to schools to see what you can get. But yeah, just sort of constantly being creative and constantly sort of, um, thinking about the world in a way of like, what are people doing behind the scenes that probably exists, in your job, you have invoices, you have communications with contractors, you have cranky DMs from fans. I'm doing a story tomorrow on like all the Ole Miss fans, what they emailed the AD during the Lane Kiffin saga. Like there was one very angry guy who was like, I will give up my season tickets if you do not let Lane coach the playoff. And I was like, that guy is weird. Like I didn't know anyone was pulling for that. But like he CC'd his wife on the email too. I was like, I know this guy. Like I like looked it up. He's like a tiny screen door salesman in Florida. Like he owns his own little like porch business where he probably makes, $10 million a year. I was like, I know exactly who this guy is. Like, and he is just what he just wants to win. And he thinks they're like fucking things up by not bringing Lane in, and to have the sort of the audacity to email the AD of Ole Miss and be like, I know better than you. Like that is the kind of stuff about college football that I love.
That's crazy. And it only happens in college football.
Only happens in college football. For any of the listeners, please drop any things that you, I'm sure you have a stream of consciousness and a long list of things that you're looking to FOIA. But if there's something on the top of your head, any listeners, please drop in the comments. I'd love to see what you have in there. Question: if somebody were to go to your website and they're an ACC fan or a college football fan, what were maybe 3 of your favorite ones that you've done since you've gotten started, or maybe the 3 that you're most proud of? I know you're kind of in the genesis here of getting started, but what are some of your favorites?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say like the 3 I was most proud of was obviously UCLA using a charity for at-risk youth to funnel NIL money. Like that one was kind of wild. I mentioned this already. Also, like DHS surveillance. One that actually didn't do great, but I was very proud of was I got my hands on all the like pitch documents that conferences made for their teams for the college football playoff last year. And this was sort of before the controversy blew up this year. And I was sort of like, they've got to be, everyone talks about how they like maybe lobby for their teams. I was like, there's got to be records behind this. So like I got all the ACC's like emails of like the case they were making for like why Miami was better than Ohio State. And I got those again this year too. But I was just like, here's the behind the scenes things. Here are the behind the scenes things that you think happen. Like they do happen and you should get to see them. And, I should say like a lot of public records are done by journalists, but anyone can do it. And you don't need to be an expert in the law. If you have a dumb idea in your head right now, you can just go ahead and send it out. Like you don't need to cite the statute. You don't need to know all the intricacies. It helps to do the job better to know them. Oh, and then I guess one more. I also got my hands on the Deloitte algorithm for the NIL Go platform, which people have been trying to get for years. So I was like, okay, I'll just track that down and blast that out. So I still haven't heard from Deloitte or the CSC about it, but seems to me like they're doing a lot of shady things they shouldn't be doing. And I was very happy that I was able to shine a light on that as well.
I mean, it's so fascinating. We could go on for hours about stuff to potentially FOIA because it is just a Pandora's box almost of things. One question that I had, honestly, today while thinking of questions for you, alcohol sales has been something that's been a popular FOIA topic over the past 2-3 years in college football. And as college programs are asking more and more of their fans and bleeding out for every dollar, are alcohol sales, do you think, going to become kind of a differentiator in college football funding going forward?
I'm not sure. So one of the bigger FOIAs on alcohol sales recently was Matt Brown of Extra Points, and he's been doing this for a lot longer than me. I just kind of showed up and was like, hey, I'm going to start doing what you're doing. I hope you don't mind. I didn't know about him until I started researching this. I was like, oh, shit, there's someone that already does this. But he's a great guy, and his site is awesome, too. I don't know. Like, I have not gone to a college game in forever. I have to assume that, like, the way that's done is schools don't get enough money from it because it's all done through third parties. Those third parties are all gouging schools. You think about like Learfields and Playflies. They have their own stadium concessions things. So like if it were me, I would try and differentiate by doing like cheaper beer. There was a team that did, who was it? Someone did a price cut on beer. And
Coastal Carolina?
Yes.
Yeah, they did one. Yeah.
Certainly. No, the teams that like are really trying to like squeeze every buck out of it. I think concessions is probably not the best way to do it. There's, jersey patches are coming, field advertisements are coming, all sorts of gross sponsorships are on the table. I haven't looked into like Kalshi and Poly Market yet, but I really have that on my to-do list. You look at Ohio State Stadium is sponsored by Anduril, the private drone, private autonomous murder drones that should not be legal. Like of course, Ohio State sponsors with them. So I think just like a lot of sketchy companies are going to be trying to get into this, and you see this with sort of private equity coming around. I've been trying to do a lot of work on like outside funding, like from Saudi Arabia, like Mike Lombardi was trying to get, like the ACC was trying to get. So I hope they can get money elsewhere so beer can stay cheap. But when I was in college, they didn't sell beers at stadiums. So I actually haven't had a beer at Lane Stadium ever. So I would like to, hopefully this year.
Well, hopefully
I don't even know, do they sell beer?
They do sell beer, and we got to get
yeah.
you back into Lane Stadium. So we'll get you into section.
So the Friday night Pitt game, so that'll be week 5, is on my birthday. I'm like, there's a pretty decent chance they'll be 4-0. There's some September Maryland that we should probably be concerned about, but they got the JMU game off their schedule. I'm like, if they're rolling into that game 4-0 on a Friday night, like, please, Virginia Tech, if you're listening to this, like, spend $50,000 that night on fireworks. Like, go, like, it is going to be like this. I'm so stupidly excited, and like this program deserves to be good. And like, if they can get any hype from like a hot start, like they need to lean into it and just I promise I won't request fireworks spending for that game if you promise to go all out. Like that's my my hostage negotiation with my alma mater.
David, tell me a little bit about, has there been any situations where you have put something out and then there was a direct reaction from the school to course correct? Have you seen that happen before, or for somebody to get in front of the story and address it?
So, I was sort of riding high because I was like, I've done 50 stories so far and I haven't gotten a single correction yet. Because a lot of times the documents are, documents are provided directly to the school from me, so there's not a lot they can quibble with. After I published the fireworks story, like Rutgers AD, who I didn't realize had been feuding with an NJ.com reporter who shared it, was like, this is totally wrong. Like, you have our spending completely wrong. And I was like, ma'am, here's the email that your school like sent to me that said this. And she was like, oh, okay, I'll look into it and get back to you. And she had taken issue with the way I had like made a graphic that said fireworks spending. And she's like, well, not all this was fireworks. Some of it was flamethrowers on the field during the introductions. I was like, ma'am, that is in the spending. Like if you read I hate to be like you got to read the article kind of person, but like the graphic was comparing Rutgers to Virginia Tech, and both those and other schools, and all those schools in Texas A&M, and all those totals were included in it. She just read it and was like, well, that's not our fireworks figure. And so she sent me this lengthy, I like explained it to her over an email, like very politely. And she was like, we're going to get you the right numbers. And she sent them all to me. And I was like, ma'am, you're still number one in spending. Like, even if you cut everything out that you're complaining about, and even if I leave it in for other schools, like you're still above. So like, what do you want me to do about it? And she was just like, okay. It's like, all right. So the only people have complained so far are Rutgers.
Wouldn't that be kind of a badge of honor? Like, I'm thinking full circle to James Franklin. He's always trying to be the best salesman for his program. I'm thinking like, hey, come to Rutgers. We have a kick-ass fireworks show on the Friday night games.
I did not know this. I was sort of like, I got this number and right before I was about to publish, and I just started watching like intros to Rutgers games. And I was like, this rules. Like, this is awesome. Like, I wasn't complaining about it. And it was very funny. The first batch of Rutgers fans who saw it, like, were rallying around their AD because I guess she's pretty new. And like, finally, we've an AD will take on the fake news media. Like, and I was like, sir, I'm writing about fireworks. Like, this is not the election. Like, please calm down. And I'm still correct, even if she's wrong, I'm not. But I didn't want to get into too many like back and forth about it. But like the second wave of it, after it started to pick up steam, where Rutgers fans were like, hell yeah, this rules. And I was like, yes, it was. So I had some Rutgers fans already like offer me tickets to the game. Like, they do a out night where they just go all out and they spend $40,000 that night on fireworks. Again, like, I'm like, man, you guys are insane with fireworks. Like, why are you yelling at me? But so I'm very excited to do, I think it's going to be against Indiana this year, but to go and attend it. And like, all told, it probably did better press for them than they've had in the past, 6 months, because they just got called out for being, $50 million, $500 million in debt, and like $80 million in the black.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, given the financial status, I could see why she would be trying to get in front of how much they spent on
Yes,
fireworks.
but the fans loved it, and I love that the fans love it. Like, it's very funny. Everyone's loves to hate on the media, and I'm like, it's fine, I get it, but like, just because I'm saying something is stupid, that's not a negative. Like, to me, that's not an insult at all. I'm like, I
Mhm.
love stupid things. I love absurd things. I love big wasteful spectacles. I just also like to know how much they cost.
Speaking of big wasteful spectacles, I had this to the end, but I'm going to bring it up now. So you sent over a comprehensive packet of emails that you had received, and I remember attending ACC Media Day, and it did feel a lot of respect for everybody that works in the ACC and the reporting and everything, but it was very much geared towards like if you went to like a museum 100 years from now talking about how amazing the ACC was. They were touting like the league of the quarterback, the league of week zero. And I just want to read this email and feel free to jump in anytime, but I have some observations here. So basically
Yeah.
they called this the ACC talking points. So ACC football demands excellence every week from every team. Our league is as deep as any with exceptional leadership and talent. The ACC plays the strongest non-conference schedule of any league combined with the challenging league. Now, this is where I have some of the corrections here. So as the conference of quarterbacks, we lead the nation in elite quarterback talent from high impact transfers to first round draft picks. Now, if you look at just QBR in the ACC, the top 3 finishers in QBR were Carson Beck, who I think a lot of people kind of poo-pooed on coming into the league. CJ Bailey, solid player. Darian Mensah, transfer from Tulane. Some other notable names that were touted at ACC Media Day: Miller Moss finished 7th, Cade Klubnik finished 9th, and Kyron Drones finished 13th. So is this the type of messaging that you get from the SEC, Big 12, Big 10, the Pac-2? Like, do they send it over in that kind of presentation?
I assume they all do, but like, it's kind of like if you have to say it, it's not true, you know?
Hmm.
Like, if you're sort of hyping this up, like the SEC has a press person who sends out
Hmm.
talking points, I'm sure, but like their talking points are good because they're winning national championships. Like the ACC is it very much has a red-headed stepchild vibe, which I get. I love it. I think it's sort of comedic and fun, but like, yeah, they're very like, the second talking point after demands excellence, it's like our league is as deep as any with exceptional leadership and talent. It's like, no, it's not. Like, they said like we have, like they flagged that they had Michael Lombardi as UNC's GM, and he like turned into a total embarrassment. Like, it's very sort of adamant. And the funny thing, this big packet I sent was trying to figure out when Notre Dame's AD said they'd been accidentally CC'd on emails about the college football playoff, and like it turned out that was kind of true. He was being a baby about it, but like the one definitive like dunk I found on Notre Dame was them actually making fun of how few yards they rushed on against Boston College. They were like, Boston College sucks, and Notre Dame could only put up like 180 yards on it. And I was like, in an email, I was like, SMU ran for 220, Clemson ran for 240. And I was like, and Notre Dame put up 110 or 120 against Boston College. I was like, that is poor Boston College is catching a stray, like for the ACC to defend itself. But no, I don't know if the SEC would be throwing like Kentucky under the bus in an email.
It's pretty shocking to me how dumb some people are to put some of these things in email and not have a Yahoo email or a Gmail email or a burner phone or any other option to put their information on. Um,
Well,
is
so
that shocking to you?
so yes and no. People do use burner phones. Coaches and ADs do use Signal, but the laws are written in such a way that anything um, a government official does in furthering university business is a public record regardless of the format. So like there was a big story about the SEC having a coaches group chat where Kirby Smart was dunking on blank on Lane Kiffin, and like them planning golf dates and shitting on each other technically isn't a actually I forgot to ask if I could curse, but fuck it. Them talking sort of amongst themselves technically isn't a public record, but if you use a private phone to conduct business, to conduct a coaching search, to like talk to a booster, that still is technically a public record. Now, to find it, you have to be pretty specific because, like, I've had records directors go to me and be like, I wanted some text from Brian Kelly when he was at LSU, and the records office is like, well, if you have the name, if you have the time it happened, and you have the specific thing, like, I'll do it. But like, you do realize I have to go to Brian Kelly and be like, sir, can I have your phone? I'm like, I love that. I do want you to do that. And they didn't even was up until after he was let go, and then they handed it over right away. But like when Virginia Tech was conducting its head coaching search, they used a committee that some boosters were on, some former players, and an email I got back from Tech about that was Whit Babcock emailing and being like, guys, don't worry, I will provide you a mechanism by which to send your like comment stuff to avoid Virginia FOIA law. And I was like, it's not illegal, but I was like, that's pretty illegal. And so like I did a story on that, and Virginia Tech was just like, they didn't have a great response to that. So I'm still been trying to figure out what sort of mechanisms they use. But like, if a coach is talking on Signal to his AD about stuff, like that is, regardless of them doing that, that is a public record. You just have to have a good sort of nose to snuff it out. So like, there is a lot of legwork that goes into figuring out how to FOIA things. Like you can just see something and say something, but for like the real juicy stuff, you got to keep sort of talking to people, which is why I'm going on podcasts and saying, if you know stuff about college football, hit me up. That same goes for you too. If you've heard rumors of how, ADs are chatting with boosters or with those third-party search firms, like that would be great. Like I heard through the grapevine that like Jimmy Sexton, like CIA just runs a Slack channel that ADs can be on. I don't know if that's true. I'm totally just sort of spitballing here, but like if you were able to sort of suss out that existed for real, you could theoretically request those things.
If somebody is using a school provided phone or a school provided email and they're communicating with somebody that isn't an employee of that school, can you FOIA the responses from both? So if a coach is having an affair, you could say, I need his text message with this mistress from this, and you would get the text from both sides?
Yeah. So anything, and a lot of people don't know this, but if you send something to a government agency, it becomes a public record. So a lot of contractors are unaware of this, which is very nice. I don't want to like blast that out into the world, but it's very true. When I was doing some stuff on like UNC and Jordan Hudson, I got like one of their chief of staff's like Instagram DMs with Jordan Hudson, and some of it was redacted, wasn't very juicy, but like that, if Jordan Hudson is trying to use that sort of back channel to communicate, like they need to hand that over, and a school records official had to go to this employee and say like, hey, I need to look at your Instagram to make sure you haven't been talking about stuff. And like they can delete, technically that's illegal, they can delete things, they can set up disappearing messages, there's all sorts of ways around it that are, the laws were not written for 2026 and all the mechanisms people have now to create records and to destroy records, but like they technically, anything you get. So yes, the Sharon Moore thing is kind of funny. If he was texting his assistant about an affair on a personal phone, she was using a personal phone, it may not have been able, Michigan's also bad at records, like maybe you couldn't get that, like, but you could still argue it's a conversation between two state employees on like state work time. So like you could make a decent argument for that. But like at the same time, someone who's like as horny as Sharon Moore was probably not like switching to his burner phone before sexting and DMing OnlyFans models. So yes, if a coach is DMing an OnlyFans model from, I've been meaning to do this of like how to figure out like OnlyFans.
Hugh Freeze would be ruined.
So what?
If Hugh Freeze had an iPhone at the time, he would have been in some serious trouble.
I mean, he still managed to get in trouble with like public. I don't remember if that came out through a public records request or a lawsuit, but he was making phone calls from his hotel while he was on either a game trip or a recruiting trip. When that hotel's being paid for by the state, those call logs are public records. I think those came out from a trial and not a public record thing. But if you had an intimation that was happening, you could do it. So yes, you could go tomorrow and go to Virginia Tech and say like, I would like all of James Franklin's like hotel bills that show all the calls he made from, the hotel phone, and they would have to give it to you.
That is that is unbelievable. And what a good a good PR.
It's truly, it's the greatest. I love this law. It's amazing. And like, you know, schools will fight back. Like I've gotten, like when Greg Schiano went to Media Day in Vegas, like I guess he's a paper receipt guy. So he got like a receipt and it was folded up and like they scanned it in and sent to me. I was like, I love that Greg Schiano does not do like, when the clerk is like, can I email your receipt? He's like, no, print it out.
That is so crazy. And again, the image of somebody that is essentially, I don't want to cast aspersions here, but somebody who's essentially Toby from The Office is walking up to Brian Kelly and being like, yeah, I'm going to need all your receipts from this last recruiting trip. It's just them digging through their pockets. Like, that's such a crazy, like a crazy visual.
I love it. And these, you know, that's what kind of why I'm like, maybe, I'm sure one thing I asked for from Virginia Tech that they said they didn't have any records for was I actually asked for any like training. Like I was looking for like onboarding materials, like what kind of documents they sign when they get hired, but like specific public records training that maybe James Franklin got. I did not ask for that, and I could probably ask for it again, but they probably sat his ass down and were like, just so you know, like everything you do is public. And again, the law is written so you're not supposed to evade it. It's supposed to be so you get to know you're a citizen. Well, none of us are citizens of Virginia, but you're a citizen of Virginia. You get a right to know what every government official is doing at any minute. And it's kind of crazy, but again, they're written in the 50s, so they weren't sort of necessarily designed for this like overwhelming sort of flood of records that we have now through email and through Slack channels. You can get Slack chats, you know, Microsoft Teams, stuff like that. Like a lot of people are FOIAing chat GPT logs. If coaches, I haven't seen any with coaches, but like the mayor of Richmond, I think, was using chat GPT and his like questions to it, public record.
Fascinating stuff. I have signed up for the newsletter. I will be keeping my eye on that as we go along. And just a couple other notes that were great from the ACC propaganda machine.
Well, first off, thank you.
Oh, of course. I'm looking forward to it.
You guys have built this from scratch, so I'm doing it now. So yeah, I know how much how hard it is. So I appreciate that, and you know how much every single subscriber means to you. Like it's really important. So thank you very much.
And that would be a great segue to please like and subscribe if you're watching this on YouTube, Sons of Saturday VT YouTube page.
So ACC owns Labor Day once again. We know how that went. TCU versus North Carolina. TCU wins 48-14. They also noted in their pamphlet here 3 former NFL coaches. Here were their records. Bill O'Brien went 2-10. Bill Belichick went 4-8, and Frank Reich went 4-8, and said he was retiring before the year, and did retire, but not before getting Cal's coach fired by beating them in, I believe, November. So that was fascinating stuff. David, we'll keep this one lighthearted and fun with the rapid fire we'll start with. So usually I ask folks, like, if you could have dinner with any 4 people, dead or alive, who would it be? But I'm going to change it a little bit given your background.
I was going to do Jonathan Allen's Hitler answer.
Okay. You could have, based upon your 4...
Sorry, I hope people remember that reference. I'm not like the weirdo commander sicko person out here.
I'm going to have to link that one in our article for people to dive into. But if you could have dinner with any 4 coaches or athletic directors, like you got the FOIA request back and you're just based off this email, you're like, oh, I could be friends with this guy, or this guy's a little bit more normal than I had assumed. Who would those 4 people be?
So one of my best friends is a Georgia fan, and she got me hooked on Georgia football, which was great to get through the fallow tech years. Like it was fun to sort of glom onto that program. And I used to live in San Francisco, and there is a combined Georgia-Virginia Tech bar, the bus stop, which is kind of a wild mix. So if you're ever in San Francisco, check that out. But I think like Kirby Smart, insane as he is, like actually would be fun to drink with. I would certainly Brent Key at Georgia Tech. I think he's a very very down to earth guy. ADs, I'm going to go with like Jeremiah Dickey is at Boise State. He's kind of like spunky and feisty online, and I think he's like righteous and fighting a good fight. And then 4th option, that's a good one. I'm gonna go with Mike Lombardi because I think he's a booze hound, allegedly. But like, I think he puts him back, and like I think he would. I was looking at his Instagram account recently because my brain is fried and I like the weirdest things. But he follows 22 Sopranos meme accounts on Instagram. Like, I'm not kidding. Like talking Sopranos. Sopranos memes daily. Like,
I follow both
like
of those accounts. I do follow both those accounts myself.
I was like, that's so many.
22 is a lot. 22 is quite a bit.
It's so many. So I think he would be a blast to get drunk with, and he seems to have good restaurant taste too, judging by his Instagram as well. So that seems kind of like a hellish mix now that I like stated out, but I'm gonna stand by it.
Sam, since it's on topic, I'll let you go with the next one for restaurants.
Yeah. Okay. You're in New York. The big question: best pizza in the city.
Oh, so I live in South Slope, so I was by Luigi's for a long time before it blew up. They're fantastic. The guy who runs it, he's been there since like the 70s. Big old guy named Gio.
Yeah.
They're one of the best spots. You have to get a whole pie there, though. Their slices are good, but the whole pie is like perfect. DOP opened up on Fifth Avenue, right by High Dive, like Fifth and First or Fifth and Garfield. This guy started baking pies during the pandemic and turned it into a business. I think that's fantastic. And then I don't love to admit it, but like when I'm drunk, Table 87 is fantastic. Like they are, they hit the spot.
You gotta have a drunk pizza spot. That's its own genre of pizza.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, typically, because Luigi's closes at like 8. So and Table 87 is kind of fine. And their slices like very saucy, which is kind of perfect when you're drunk. So those would be my 3.
I'm gonna go for New York style. I'm gonna go Graziella's here in Fort Greene as my favorite. Fort Greene in Brooklyn, and me
and my wife are big bikers, and we're always biking down Vanderbilt to like get to the like Kent Avenue like bike path to Williamsburg, and I see Graziella's all the time. I've never been, so I'm glad to know it's good.
100%. It's very, very good. And then if I'm doing Neapolitan style, which is my normal favorite, Little Frankie's in Lower East Side Manhattan. That whole family, that family's from Napoli, and it's insanely good pizza.
I'm like a Frank Prizanzano stan. I got to cook once at his apartment. Like he like gave some Instagram followers like a chance to just come and cook, and he has like a full kitchen. Like he has a giant hood in his kitchen, so you got to smoke while you were like cooking like in his apartment. His entire floor of an East Village building on Broadway. He's an awesome guy, and like Little Frankie's is fantastic.
Yeah, David, legendary spot.
You are rapidly climbing the most interesting man in the world that has been on this podcast as we're going through this. So
thank you. And I'm always happy to come back. Like I love talking. I'll have plenty of dumb stuff that Virginia Tech's doing, so don't worry.
What is the craziest FOIA saga that you can recall that we haven't discussed yet? Like I imagine the Jordan Hudson thing had to be crazy. I imagine, coaching searches have to be crazy, but if you just had to think of one for this rapid fire segment, what's one that jumps to mind?
I think the craziest one was actually the like UCLA one, because I was kind of shocked how like blatant it was, but how I sort of figured it out. I didn't know what I was doing when I first started this. Like I knew FOIA, I didn't know college football, but I requested UCLA's emails with their NIL collective around the time that Nico I'm going to botch his name, but if someone can correct me, was transferring from Tennessee. And like, there wasn't anything in there. They sent me like 80 pages, and a lot of it was like, asking for W-9s for players and telling them to like submit payment for this and that. And at the very bottom, there was just an email that was like, it's a check for Shelter 37. It said like, send your check to Shelter, it said, write your check for Shelter 37 for men's NIL for football. I was like, what the hell is Shelter 37? I looked it up, and it was a charity for at-risk youth in the LA area. I looked up who ran it, and it was the head of UCLA's NIL department. I was like, holy shit. That seems bad, but I didn't have enough to go on. So I sent them a follow-up request for like all their emails requesting conversations that mentioned Shelter 37. And they sent it back, and they were basically just like, look, NIL, like the tax-deductible NIL collectives that had cropped up, like Blue Line Sports and, Blueprint Foundation or whatever, Blueprint Sports, are getting cracked down on by the IRS. So if you want to get a tax donation, send it to this charity for at-risk youth, and they will steer it to UCLA football. And I was like, this seems so illegal. And I sent it to a bunch of tax experts, professors at different universities. I was like, please tell me how I'm wrong. Like, tell me I'm reading this the wrong way. Like, tell me I like am an idiot and I don't know shit about tax law. And they're all like, no, this is tax fraud. So I ran that story. But the funny thing is that was only half the records I was supposed to get. UCLA has another batch that they're supposed to send me, which they just have not since that article came out. It's about 2 months overdue. And I'm just like, you know what? I understand why you're not sending that. But they'll send me other stuff, but they will not send me the rest of their emails detailing tax fraud. So I have a lawyer dealing with them now. But that one was particularly very rewarding because I was like, wow, it shouldn't be this easy, but sometimes it is.
I gotta imagine some of these just chip away at the faith in humanity, because all of us know that nothing shady ever goes on in Los Angeles or Louisiana for that matter. Back to your Hokie roots here. Favorite Hokie sports memory? You went to school at a great time. 2003 to 2007, you saw much better football than I saw, and that we have seen since. So what is your favorite Hokie memory?
They didn't win it, but I was at the 2010 Boise State game, and that was such a fun experience, and they were so close to doing it. And like, I still remember that very fondly. I'm trying to think, what specific game did I really, really love? I don't know. The Boise State game was terrible and miserable, and yet, through the lens of time, I remember it very fondly. I was like, had they won that, they would have beaten JMU. They would have gone to a national title. I went to the Sugar Bowl when the catch, not a catch. That was actually, these are actually bad memories. Why am I?
None of these have been positive yet.
No, these are good. Well, I mean, what I'm trying to think of. Trying to think of a game I went to that they won, but I think I wind up going to mostly losses.
So maybe we don't want you at the Pitt game.
I think that's perfectly reasonable. I am one of those. I have a very cursed fandom. I've been a Washington Caps fan my whole life, and that they finally broke through, and then have been wishy-washy ever since. Favorite? Gosh, that is really tough. I haven't thought about that. Did they win the 2006 Sugar Bowl in Georgia?
No, we lost to.
No.
We played Georgia and lost to
But
Georgia.
they were
Lost
up
to Georgia.
30-3 at halftime, right?
Yep.
Okay, the first half of the 2006 Georgia Bowl, the Sugar Bowl in Georgia.
I don't know if it was 30-3, but I know that we were winning at halftime, and it was just a disaster in the second half.
Some guy named Matt brought Georgia back in that game.
Mm-hmm. Do you have a Hokie hero?
In terms of football, I loved my professors at the College of Communications. I thought they were great journalism professors. Sam Riley was there. Roland Lazenby was one of my professors, and he is sort of a prickly, ornery old journalist. And like, through the lens of time, I think when I used to write a college football column, I was very tough on Sean Glennon. But like, looking back on it, I'm like, you know what, that guy, he was giving his all and respect, because I could not have done that. And I was just a cranky blogger who was like, man, he sucks. But Ryan Williams, by far. I loved watching Ryan Williams as running back.
I got to tell you, it's been a pleasure. And Sam, I think you've met him a couple of times, but Sean Glennon could not be a better human being. Who definitely, props to you, took a lot of crap. But I think when people meet him and when people look at the totality of his career, it's a little bit of a different story.
Yeah, I wonder, like, his record probably was pretty freaking good when you add it all up over those seasons.
We just did a show on ranking the Virginia Tech college quarterbacks, and when you look back at his career, like, the results of his games usually went pretty well, and he was kind of the perfect quarterback for the style of team Virginia Tech had then. So he is one of those guys where you look back a decade and a half later with much fonder eyes than you did at the time.
Yeah. Justice for Sean Glennon. I loved Ryan Williams. I thought he was so good. He was after I graduated, but like, he was so much fun to watch.
There's been a lot of restaurant turnover in Blacksburg over the decades, but is there a meal from Blacksburg that you miss the most?
Oh, Substation 2. Is it still there?
It's back. Oh,
it's back. It's back.
Mm-hmm.
Hell yeah.
When was the last time you were in Blacksburg, David?
So I took my wife in 2020. I should know this because we just got engaged. It was either 2022 or 2023. We went for a homecoming against Miami. They got absolutely blown to bits, but it was great to be back. We went to Rivermill, went to Tots, went to whatever that Mexican restaurant is, or Big Al's is now. I
Alive, yeah.
miss. I was a big Al's head, and I miss that so
Oh,
much.
pour one out, man. It really, there was never a better place to be packed in like a sardine with all of your best friends and have a mediocre time, but remember it so fondly. It really, not a
But
mediocre
like
time in the moment, but looking back on it and you explain it to be like, oh, tell me about Big Al's. Well, you're
like
all in a room.
the bathroom door that just opened into the crowd. Like you just like literally you go in there, go to the bathroom, you'd open it, and 100 people staring at you watching you go to the bathroom.
You bring friends and you're like, man, this bar used to be so awesome. Oh, what was so great about it? Well, we were just all in there and we were just all in there. And it was so
But
great.
one of the like owners, I have to assume he's the owner or manager at Tots. He was there when I was there, and like
Mhm.
I would just always tip like $1 or $2, which I guess college kids didn't do. So like he has remembered me all this time, and so when I went in like 2020, I guess 2022, I was like, "There's no way he's gonna remember me." And I like walked in, and he was like, I ordered a beer. He's like, "You?" And I was like, "Hell yeah!" I mean, he probably does it to everyone, but it seemed like he remembered me, so I felt very vindicated in my college era tipping policy.
Beverage of choice on a game day at Big Al. Let's say you're back at Big Al's the night after a big Hokies win, because it is going to be a Hokies win.
Yes.
Well, we won't be back at Big Al's. That doesn't exist anymore.
No, Tots the 20-ounce Budweiser. It was $3 when I was there. It's like it was $3.75, like 20 years later or 15 years later. I give me a Budweiser and I'm always happy.
Love it.
Last couple that I have for you.
Keep going. I got nothing else to do tonight.
As a journalist, what is your overall opinion on AI's entrance into the world and how/do you use it? I mean, I got to imagine if you're getting 800 pages from Carolina and they're like, good luck with this. Are you using that as a summarizing tool? What is your overall feel on AI? What a question. That's such a broad question.
No,
Good question. Good question.
it was very cool. I just got to speak to a college media convention, which was a bunch of students who came to New York to learn about journalism. And I got to deliver a little speech about how to start your own thing, which was very fun. And I was expecting questions about AI. I didn't get any. But like, I feel about AI the same way, not the same way, but like, remember when cranky sports writers were like, I'm never going to do like an Insta tweet, and now they're all jobless. Like, I feel like if you're not sort of, not necessarily embracing technology, but not sort of willing to try it, I think you're going to be left behind. So I don't like it for summarizing documents because, as I said, like you get a lot of stuff back, and if you don't sort through it, you're going to miss it. Like an AI is not going to find the one. Like I may find an email that I'm like, that is really dumb, and I'm excited. Like I once found a coach who like didn't complete his like how to be a better recruiter thing, and like looked up his recruiter, was the Idaho Vandals coach, and he was like, well, he's 190th in recruiting this year. Like that makes sense. So I don't think it can do that. I used it a lot when I started up my site just as someone to like bounce ideas off of. Like I was like, I'm thinking about doing this, I'm thinking about doing that. How do I do this? How do I do that? I found it very useful for that in a way. To do it, I got like very emotional when I started my site because I was like, I've been talking to this AI for like 3 months, and I got to tell him I'm launching. I was like in bed, and I like said to my wife, I was like, oh my god, I gotta wake up. I gotta tell ChatGPT that I'm launching tomorrow. And she sort of looked at me like, what the hell is wrong with like, I got a very, like, positive message from it, and I was, like, got a little choked up, and it's sort of
Mhm.
like, I can understand why this drives people insane. Like, I'm relatively, I won't say normal, but, like, mostly well-balanced. And I was like, if you're not all there, I can see, um, what's, see how it drives people insane. I have been trying to build bots that crawl news sites to pitch me ideas because, like, I'm very good at, uh dumb big topics, fireworks, balloons, police. I have one on police escorts in a couple weeks, how much everyone's spending just to like bus here and there to like the stadium. But like the day-to-day news I definitely struggle with. So I've been trying to build a bot that like reads ESPN, reads Reddit, reads On3, and then like pitches me the top 10 stories of the day. So that is still works in progress. So like, and I do use it for copy editing too. Like I think it's great to like catch a lot of typos that I miss. So I've been trying to embrace it in ways that are beneficial to me and not like detrimental. So I hope my message to journalists would be like, find a way where it works for you and use that. So then when someone asks you how you use it, you can have an answer and you don't sound like a Luddite, like trying to interview for a job.
I am impressed is a silly word to use, but I'm glad that you didn't go the pound sand and it's all awful route, because I completely agree with you. There have been situations, even in the 7 years that we've done this, where you're like, I'm not going to adopt this, or I'm not going to do this. And it's like, well, okay, then will begin to fall behind. And then that's how that will weed itself out. I
Yeah.
completely agree with that stance.
I mean, I
Um,
still like writing articles, and everyone's like, "You should be podcasting," and I'm like, "But I like writing stuff down." So like, I'm trying to get better about, and maybe I'll turn this into a podcast at some point.
You,
But like, I'm
I
still,
firmly believe,
stuck in my ways in a lot of ways too.
I,
But
I,
I
I,
try not to be.
I firmly believe that there are some stories that can't be podcasted effectively. You
mhm.
have to like sit down and read them. And I think the style of stories that you are going on about are kind of perfect for going over all the facts and figures and the whole story of how you went about this request, what the results are, and kind of what are the ramifications of it are. You kind of need to read that through. And you can go ahead and talk about that article on a podcast, but in order to really understand what you as the author are trying to get at, that I think needs to be written down and then read by the end user. And I think it's awesome that you're keeping it alive, because it would have been, I mean, just sitting here and talking to a microphone, like, it isn't that terribly hard, but sitting down and writing an article like that it's challenging.
Sam, to your point, a medium that does a very good job at this, and I've actually been watching them, and I was like, I wish there was an article to go along with this, but it's those long form videos on YouTube. I think it's called Beef History, where like they'll break down, they'll be like, why does Kevin Garnett hate so and so? And they'll like flash like these articles about what he said about the owner of the Timberwolves, and they'll flash like the contract offer. And it's like, I wish I could ingest this at my own speed versus like hitting pause, like screening in on the graph that you put up there. But what is your goal for this? So
I thought I was gonna get a history of like cattle in America. I was very excited for that. I was like, I would absolutely watch a 20-minute video on that. My goal is to make this a self-sustaining publication. You know, I didn't work for a big site. It was a relatively small news site, but I still sort of saw the problems with algorithmic media and with ad-based, you know, profits. And it's just has been it was a very frustrating experience. Like, you didn't have an intimate relationship with your reader. You'd publish an article and then you'd throw it up on Facebook and you'd hop over to Google Analytics, and none of it felt real or authentic. So like, I've been a very big fan of all the independent outlets that are starting up. I do, I understand there are so many newsletters and people can't subscribe to it, but like, to just be able to make a living off this, I only started 6 months ago, so I'm not able to take myself out to dinner yet. But like, really, that's kind of it. Like, just to be able to afford a nice dinner every 2 or 3 months and like pay my rent too. But like, if it turns into something bigger down the road, I'd love to. Like, I would really love it to get into covering Olympic sports a lot more. That's where a lot of the let's just say child molesters are, for lack of a better phrase. Like, you've got your Olympic swim coaches, you've got your gymnast coaches, like all those sports are like horrors. You've seen the stories out of Michigan State, stuff like that. So I'd love to try and cover that world a lot more. And men's and women's basketball, I'd like to get into that. So like, I do think it's expandable. Hopefully maybe one day I can bring some people on to do more of that. But like, I think the other thing that I didn't mention, is that like, I do think this is really interesting as a way to just sort of shed a microcosm on big business generally. Like, no other business where, I think University of Texas's football program is valued at like $2 billion. It's not even the whole athletics department. That's just sort of the worth of the football program. That's double like unicorn status in Silicon Valley. And like, where else can you see where the CEO is like taking the company private jet? Where like his calendar, like, I got Steve Sarkisian's calendar once. He was meeting with a tailor like before a game. I was like, that's cool, man. I love that for you. Like, you do look great. Like, he has good suits, but like, where can you see like what salaries everyone is making, from the chief executive down to like the PR people? I did a story when I first launched it and mentioned about like how poorly EAs are paid. Like, in the SEC, they're making $21 an hour, while like coaches are making $10 million. Like, I think it's just such a great way to shed a light on the world at large, because this is the only government entity that operates like a big business that's trying to make a profit, that's trying to maximize profit in that way. So like, I really hope people read it with an eye towards the world at large. Because when I launched, people were like, "You're not like, you're a big college football fan, but I'm not like a huge like stat head, or like I don't like if you ask me to name 20 quarterbacks right now, like I could not. Like I maybe don't. I can't. Yeah, I keep using Carson Beck as an example for a lot of stuff. I'm like, he's not there anymore. So like I like it as a lens to look at big business and how money travels. You know what big boosters are doing. I've done stories on like lobbying that the NCAA is doing in Congress. So like I think it's just I really want to shine a light on a world that feels so opaque, and hopefully people learn about how awful rich programs are, because they all are really, really bad.
David, this was fascinating. I would love open invite. Any interesting stories?
Don't say
ACC? No, open invite. Any interesting stories in the ACC? I'm really, really excited to follow along with this, and makes it even cooler that you're a Hokie grad. I hope to get you down to Blacksburg this fall. Let's get
but
that.
Not fine. Not for.
Let's get a win. Let's get a win under your belt.
Yeah, let's get you down there. Maybe VMI would be a great game for you to come down to.
Sorry. I need to like step back and look at their schedule in 2007, because I'm like, I'm sure
we won a lot of football games while you were in school.
I know, but I'm like, I had to have gone to like a halfway decent game.
No, you're at Rivermill.
I was. All right, give me something here. I don't know. Okay, actually, I may not have gone to many games my senior year. Oh wait, no, 2006 would be. Sorry, wait, give me one. Okay, I was like, that doesn't seem correct. Oh yeah, I'm just like scarred by. Man, I don't know.
Yeah,
maybe I've never seen a win in Virginia. Okay, but I did see Tech was winning 21-3 at halftime of the Chick-fil-A Bowl in 2006. So there we go. The first half of the Chick-fil-A Bowl in 2006 is my definitive answer.
There we go.
We need to embrace that energy as we go along. So everybody, please check it out. We will have this website linked. Check it out. I signed up for the newsletter and encourage you to do so. FOIAball.com, FOIAball.com. Sam, you have one more thing?
It's the coolest logo I maybe have ever seen. It's a seal wearing a helmet.
Not to do crazy, but I did that on Saturday, actually.
There you go.
I decided to like lean fully in. I was like, no looking back now. So
I'm not kidding. That's the kind of logo that's going to make me remember FOIAball.
Thank you. Well, I will definitely send some stickers your way. Text me your addresses, or well, Sam, we should get a beer when the season starts.
I'll walk to your apartment. You're in South Slope. I will walk there on a sunny day.
I will definitely be having people over for. I always have people over. We have a great roof. We do a 4th of July party. We do a marathon party. So like anytime, open invite. But I've got your number now, so we'll talk separately.
We'll need a pizza review from you guys here coming up here soon. So with that, appreciate y'all tuning in. Make sure you check it out, David Covucci, and we'll be talking soon. Thanks, my man.
Thank you. No, this was fantastic.